The way that I got into doing almost any of this was through songwriting. I wanted to be a professional drummer for a living, and that was like my goal. I wanted to be like the best drummer in the world, and I never became the best drummer in the world. At some point when I got like later in my 20s, I had not really had any kind of success. So I really like mourned that for a while, like near the end of my 20s, like are not gonna happen. But that's not sad because I can play drums and I can make music anyways. Like, why do I have to have my self-worth wrapped up in doing this professionally? I was kind of like doing some, different work and things, and then I was coming home and I found myself playing drums more, but I also found myself playing guitar and writing songs and things with no intention whatsoever of anyone ever hearing it. And that was the first time in my life that I was writing songs for me and playing music for me. And weirdly, it was the first time in my life that anyone actually really connected with any of the things I was doing. And that turned into, me meeting Phoebe and then her hearing a couple of the things I was working on, and then, her being like, we should do some of this together. And she didn't have any fans or any success or anything at that time, so we started writing a bunch of songs just for fun, thinking maybe one day we'd put them on like SoundCloud or something. And that was literally how we wrote our whole first record, was like no expectation at all of anyone hearing it. I basically, since I can remember, have been listening to records even before I was recording or producing things and being like, how does this sound so cool? Kind of became obsessed with like, okay, I know what something sounds like when you just put a microphone in front of it, but like, how do you make it have a lot of personality? I feel like in making music, there's like at least two completely different crafts and art forms that need to happen. I think like the writing here and then the actual recording and production part here as completely different things, but that, you need both in order to have a song that exists. Sometimes I'll look for pieces of gear that have a lot of character, and sometimes I'll look for pieces of gear that are just really reliable. But I try to just reconcile the song and what value it has with sounds that also just give me that environment. That, I feel like, has led me to just experimenting with lots of different pieces of gear and then finding things that I know, like, oh, this works for me every time. The Alpha Evos I liked instantly, and the reason that I wanted them to begin with was because they have that level of honesty, but they also have that like kind of subbiness that you don't get out of like other speakers. Like, they have a low end, and I want both, right? I want honesty in my mid-range, I want honesty in my top end, but I do want, I want to hear that kick drum too. And I was like, this has those two things that I really want as like a one-stop shop for me. Getting that nice middle ground between honesty and like a little bit of polishedness that I also want. And so having a speaker like this is allowing you to hear speakers like you might encounter in the real world kind of all over the place. So in a way, it's a really good representation of how people are listening to music, And I personally like having low end, but I like it to be tight. And whether I'm doing something that's really delicate and acoustic and recorded to tape, or whether I'm doing something that's just full-blown pop, I want a product and a speaker that can kind of show me that I can listen to both of those things and trust what I'm hearing. They're not ultra flat speakers. They're flat and honest in the places that I need them to be, but they're being honest to me about what it's gonna sound like when I listen to it somewhere else. And then when I go move it to listen to it in a different environment, I'm like, yeah, it sounds right. That sounds like what it's supposed to sound like.